This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Linode, high-performance cloud hosting for everyone. Visit linode.com/MacVoices and take $20 off your first server package. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is the road to Macstock. We're back on the road to Macstock talking to presenters, attendees, friends, guests, anybody that we think you should hear from before you land in Woodstock, Illinois in July. So I decided to just get this one out of the way up front and be done with it. Allison Sheridan is here. Allison, how are you? It's good to see you.
I'm doing good, Chuck. Now, have you told them what you did to me last year at Macstock? Might be a good place to start.
You mean about how I talked you out of your original topic and then talked you into mind mapping?
Well, that was part of it. That actually happened on this show, so they actually heard it happen.
Yeah,
no,
true.
what you did to my phone.
Oh, well, see, you made the mistake of handing me your phone.
Well, let me tell what happened. Yes, of course, I handed him my phone to ask him to take a picture, and being the snark that he is, he took a picture of his own face, and as I recall, it was very close up and very creepy, and so that was bad enough. But he then made that my lock screen, so that was really awesome. I really appreciated that. So I changed the beginning of my talk because everybody thinks that it's me being the terrible person, being mean to poor old Chuck. But I started my talk with a fade in of what my lock screen looked like, which was my adorable 2-year-old grandson. And all of a sudden it fades into where it's this close up of Chuck in a horrifying way. And I think I got the audience on my side with that one, Chuck.
Well, no, let's be fair. I don't think I did not change your lock screen. I didn't have time.
Maybe somebody else did that.
I think I know who the culprit is, but I'm not going to call their name out. But all I did was, and if you recall, you handed your phone to me to take a few pictures, and you were giving me a hard time because I was not taking the picture fast enough, when in fact, I was flipping the camera around to take that picture of myself and then flipping it around to get the picture you wanted. So I
think Brett Terpstra might be who did it, because later Brett took my phone, did the same thing, and he made it my wallpaper. Which, by the way, I don't know if you're gonna be able to see it. There are video viewers here, right?
Oh, yes.
Let's see if you can see it now. It's too dark. Bring it down. This is great audio if there's anybody on audio. But if I swipe this over, you can see that it's Brett Terpstra's eyeball, and I have never taken it off. I'm going to make him take it off in June or July.
Or take it off July at Macstock.
Yes, that's my plan.
That's great. So this is the kind of thing that happens at Macstock. We really do have a lot of fun with each other, and you just never know what practical joke might happen. So be careful who you hand your phone to.
Chuck.
So, Allison, I don't know if anybody will believe this. As we record this, I honestly don't know what your topic is. I know that you were announced as a speaker, but I have no idea what we're going to be talking about. So what are you tackling this year?
The topic that I went with this year is a little different. It's going to be a technology topic, but it's a story I'm going to tell about how technology created a community and a new social circle for me. So what I'm going to do is talk about how starting a podcast, it was me sitting alone in my living room with a microphone talking to a recorder, and how over time, the different technologies that I've deployed have actually changed what my life is like. So, for example, why do I know you, Chuck? Because I started podcasting, right? You didn't dodge and weave at the same time. Somehow the Mac Roundtable got together. Well, it was pieces of things that were put together where each time I evolved the technology, my circle of friends in the world expanded. And the types of people, like right now, I do screencasts online for Don McAllister. I do tutorials for him. And that's an actual job. So he does make me call him boss when I talk to him. But the way I ended up knowing Don, or in a situation like that, was Don invited me, or convinced the people that did the Mac Geek cruises to bring me on the cruise as one of the speakers. Well, how did I know Don? That Don was from the Mac Roundtable. Things, you see all these things come back to the different technologies and things that I worked with and how that changed. The single biggest change being doing a live show. Does that make any sense?
Oh, listen, it makes perfect sense. And we should have mentioned up front that the theme of this year's Macstock is create. And so Mike asked everyone to, think differently about maybe how we do our presentations or the angle that we come at it. That is a really interesting one. I'm going to be anxious to just hear the evolution. I mean, I know some of it, but I probably don't know all of it as to how you adopted different things along the way and, expanded your reach or your, reach, influence. I don't even know what the proper term
Friendship.
Friendship. Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Now, one of the things, I don't know if the audience knows, but you and I have gotten into some interesting conversations about community. And if you do a podcast and you just talk into a microphone and you record and you put the audio up, you're talking one to many, but there's no feedback to you of what people thought about that. And the feedback you can get from that is all up to you, how much feedback you want. You could, post an email address somewhere, maybe people email you. But I mean, I know podcasters who have podcasts that have no website. So there's no contact form. So there's no interaction. I mean, you can say your email address on the air, you can say your Twitter handle. But I knew a guy that I knew in person who had been listening to my show for like 3 years. Every week he'd come in and talk to me about what I talked about the day before. And then one day he said, "What's your email address again?" I say my email address on every single episode. You can contact me at allison@podfeed.com. And he had no idea, like couldn't even guess what my email was. So the next step might be to have a website. Well, okay, you could have comments. A lot of people disable comments. Well, now you've just shut that door, whether you want to have that community in. I'm the, throw every possible door open kind of community person. I know you don't like people, but I actually do. And so I like to have, a lot of friends and people across the world to talk to.
I like people just fine. Why do you think I go to CES and NAB and stick microphones in people's faces? It's fun to talk to them.
I mean, why do you hide behind a microphone? Is that what you're saying?
I know. I don't remember saying that part. But you make a really interesting point, and it is something that I think podcasting. When we all started out, we didn't know what we were doing, and we were trying to figure some of this out. And then with the rise of social media, everybody had to jump on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. We could go on for hours.
It's exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah, naming things. But, you really need to have those presences because half of your audience may be on Twitter, a third might be on Facebook, and another might be on Instagram. And I picked those three because right as we record this, those are the big three. So I think that's fair to say.
That's not where the most people who talk to me are actually on Slack.
Okay, that's interesting that you decided to open a Slack channel because I've not done that yet, and I've contemplated it, but I'm not quite sure.
It's
Slack
splinters.
It's splinters, and let's face it. You also when you're asking for all this feedback and doing all this engagement, you have to be able to keep up with it, or then perceived as aloof or just sloppy and not paying attention. So
there's another phase to this, though, another angle to look at it, and that's kind of what I'm looking at here is the when you have an email address, that's one-to-one. When you're podcasting, it's one-to-many. What ends up happening with a community like a Slack community or a Facebook group is not a Facebook page, but a Facebook group, is that you end up with a conversation between the members. So pretty soon there's somebody who's posting questions and other people are posting answers to those questions. So it starts to self-perpetuate. And there's a couple of fine gentlemen who started their own podcast because they met in my live chat channel. I forget where I had it hosted at the time. I move it around all the time. But it's through these technology changes that I've met more and more people. So we had a Google Plus group for a long time, and it was super active and it was great. And then the giant sucking sound of Facebook, I was like, oh, I guess I better make a Facebook group. And so I did that. And all the people in Google Plus were mad at me because they're like, no, don't do it. Don't succumb to that. But I did. And that Facebook community grew quickly. And there's a lot of people in there and they all talk to each other. And that's great. And I'm in there all the time. But then Google Plus shut down. So I had to find a place to put Google Plus. And I'm not going to abandon those people. And these are people who would rather have their eyeballs eat by rats than say the word Facebook. So I created the Slack channel. And now a bunch of people have come over from Facebook. And Facebook has actually quieted down a little bit.
I find this really interesting that because honestly, I did not know that you'd gone over to the Slack thing. I knew that your Facebook group, I see things posted in there. But there you go. That's just another channel that frankly you have to maintain. And that's not a complaint. It's just a statement of fact that at some point you have to do that. I know I've been, I don't know about you, but I've been experimenting with micro.blog and Mastodon as well.
Oh God, I tried. couldn't crack the code on Mastodon. I had a guy on from Germany, I can't remember what his name was, but I had him on Chit Chat and he explained it all to me. And by the time I was done, I knew less about it than when I started. I was like, I can't figure it out. Well, and it's hard. It's not going to happen, right?
Yeah. See, what's hard to you though may not be hard to somebody else. And that's part of the challenge we have as podcasters is trying to figure out where our audience is and where they want to be or where they will come. And that's not an easy thing right now.
And I would even change it. The reason you have trouble with Slack is what you need. Well, and not necessarily trouble with Slack but you need to be where they are, not where they'll come. So the reason I did Facebook was because they're already there. So, they're already, scrolling through a bunch of, kitten photos or whatever. And then and pictures of people's food. And then they're like, oh, look, there's some stuff going on in the Nosillacast group. I'll go ahead and check that while I'm here. So it's a little harder for people to pick up and go to Slack. But then a lot of people are in Slack because they do it for business. And so that's kind of an advantage to it. It's got a little bit of that lift, not as much as Facebook, though.
Yeah, and I think I characterized it the way I did is you said you were trying to move your Google Plus community over to Slack. So
Yeah. I mean, anybody who was going to all the trouble of going to Google Plus when the lights were starting to dim, they're going to pick up and go somewhere with you if you make them a home that isn't annoying, And back to the technology angle driving the community feel. When you talk about it, you refer to almost like it's a burden that this is something I'm going to have to maintain, and that is an absolute fact. But it's what I feed off of. It's what makes me do this. The reason I do a podcast, the reason I've been doing it for 14 years, in 2 weeks, it'll be 14 years without missing a show, is because I thrive on talking to people about technology. That's what I live and breathe for. That's why I get out of bed in the morning. I want to go do that again. So the chance to have people in my Slack talking about tech and, posting cool articles about amazing things that are happening at Apple or at Samsung or wherever, neat tools they found, new gadgets they're working on, asking questions to me, that's what I want. So those aren't burdens to me. It's burdensome that when I have to post a bunch of places. That drives me bananas, but it doesn't make it, having those communities is why I do this. And that's why getting back to the theme of Macstock, that's why I create. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think we have more similarity than you might imagine. If I make it sound like a burden, no, it's not a burden because I too love hearing from listeners and viewers. It can become a burden though, trying to fit into the day. Check Twitter, check Facebook. In your case, check Slack. Check Instagram, because you're right. We're posting there, and there's a very bad temptation that while you're doing the posting, you check what's going on and then you just go right down a rat hole. And
yeah.
So you really have to be disciplined to find the right time to do the checking. But because I want to, and I know you do. You want to appear responsive to your audience.
Right. No, I actually want to be responsive, Chuck, not just appear responsive.
Oh, all right.
You're going to dig a hole every sentence. I'm looking for that one flaw.
One word, and you could just dive right on it. Dive right on it.
Backing up a little. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I definitely wanted to ask you though about the live channel that you do in with your show, because I know from experience with other live shows that sometimes the live channel takes on a life of its own. That what you're talking about on your show has nothing to do with what's going on in the channel.
100%. I believe it was big in Virginia. Kevin Alder said, "What is that annoying woman in the corner still talking?" Because the day I figured that out, let me back up a little bit. There are two pieces to this. We were going to be on travel when, by the way, we ended up going to Europe because of people we met through podcasting virtually, Bart Bouchatz and Don McAllister and Nightwise in Belgium. And so we did a trip where we went to England, Ireland, and Belgium and met those guys. So that was another thing that happened because of podcasting, because of technological things that I had done caused this community of people I wanted to get to know. And we were in the airport, and it was Sunday night at 5:00, which is what time my live show is, but we weren't on the air. And Steve went on to check on something, and it turned out my entire community had gotten up and gone over to Ken Ray's live chat room. They just went in and said, "Hey, let's meet over there. Since it's like the doors are closed at where we normally play cards on Friday night, let's just go over here and play cards." So that's when I realized that I wasn't really that important to the plot anymore, that they just wanted to talk to each other. And it's the time they get together. That's when they do this. And I read an article in Wired magazine, and I wish I'd torn it out at the time and remembered who wrote it, but it was talking about how things like that are why our parents played bridge on Friday night. It wasn't about playing cards. It was about having cocktails and hanging out with your friends and singing afterwards. Maybe the card playing was fun, but it was about that community group getting together. And the live show does that in a virtual sense.
So you make a really interesting point, because I know the few live shows I've done, and I haven't done enough to really generate any serious following. But I know that the majority of my listeners, and maybe your stats too, come from the on-demand stuff, whether it's on Facebook or whether it's through your podcast feeds or whatever. And so as a result, it makes sense that maybe the live thing the content at that moment isn't necessarily quite as important as just the fact that there's a place to go and get together.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. That is it. Beyond any shadow of a doubt. It's like 100 to 1, maybe 1,000 to 1. The numbers. Yeah, more like 1,000 to 1. Listen versus ever interact, and yet it's those people that come to the live show that really get me going. And each live show doesn't have a ton of people in it. But Steve's been keeping a list of everybody who came. Every time a name comes in we don't know, we ask him, and he adds it to this list. And it's been kind of a rotating cast of characters. These people, people have lives. They get bored, they move on, they do something else. So it's a constantly flowing in and out. There's some people who've been around forever. But on the other hand, we had a woman. What is her name? Shoot, she just joined Slack. She's been listening for 14 years, and this is the first time she's ever interacted with me. And so you never know who's out there listening, but these people making I should explain a little about what my live show is. It's not a live show. It's watching me create the recorded show. So I'm recording a podcast that's maybe an hour and a half, depending on how much other stuff I have in it. And what you're doing is watching me do the recordings. So you're watching me flub up and stop and start and edit and bring in other recordings and paste them into my audio recording software and goof around. But it's such a fun community. I mean, there's all these crazy private jokes Like if you look over my left shoulder right here, you'll see a meat grinder, a sausage grinder actually. And that was sent to me by Kevin Alder. And they refer to the show as watching the sausage get made, because it really is. You see it crash and burn, and it's a big mess watching it get made. And he just one day sent me a sausage grinder, and that became part of the folklore, of the show.
So that I don't want to take us too far off topic, but I think this is important. That in the early days of podcasting, that seemed to be one of the appeals. That there was no editing, you recorded it, and if the doorbell rang and you had to go answer it because the UPS guy was there, then oh, hold on, I'll be right back. And that I have to tell you, that always drove me a little bit crazy, because I felt like that was disrespecting the audience a little bit, and yet the audience seemed to love it. And so this means that you're sort of playing both ends against the middle. You're still doing that in a live stream and letting people see the sausage be made, and yet you are putting out a more polished, finished, edited product at the end.
Yeah, it's sort of the best of both worlds. And certainly not everybody wants to see the sausage get made, but again, it's not about the podcast or the technologies I'm talking about. Half the time, it's them enjoying when I screw up. It's, hey, you just said it was 1969. It's actually 2019, Allison, that kind of thing. And that is really handy, because I'll say things incorrectly. And it's really good to have somebody tell you right then before you publish it. And you're like, I'm going to get emails like crazy about that stupid thing I said. So having a live audience, they sort of keep me honest.
I'm happy to welcome Linode as a new MacVoices sponsor this week. Linode is where you go when you want a high-quality cloud host for whatever you're doing. Websites, development, hosted services, whatever you're doing. Linode just opened their latest data center in Toronto, Canada. That means that users can comply with in-country data protection requirements while taking advantage of some of the best tools and tech in the business. Not in Canada? Linode will be opening an additional data center in Mumbai by the end of 2019. And they already have 10 other data centers around the globe. How fast is it to get up and running with Linode? This fast. Pick a plan, pick a distro, pick a location. Boom. Linode has tools that make it easy to get your server up and running in minutes, not hours or days. I'll be telling you more about Linode as we go along, but why wait? Visit linode.com/MacVoices. Find out what they can do for you, and then, as a first-time customer, take $20 off your first order. That's linode.com/MacVoices for a $20 credit on your first order. Thanks to Linode, and welcome as a new sponsor of MacVoices. Well, so how are you going to present this? Is this going to be like in steps or in waves as you adopted new things and the effects that you saw?
I think the latter. I actually find Mike Potter's format challenging. I'm sure you've talked about this before, but there's a 20-minute spiel that you do on the main stage, and then there's a deep dive you do in the afternoon. And the deep dives, there are several tracks in parallel, but the main stage stuff is always, the 20-minute ones are just everybody's in the same room watching the same thing. But it's cool because you get an idea of like, that speaker's not that interesting. This one's really good. I want to go to that one, not this one. And it gives the audience a chance to sort of have the appetizer, if you will. But as a presenter, that's hard. Like, do I just tell the first 20 minutes of a 1-hour story? Do I give the highlights of the 1-hour story and then try to deep dive into the highlights of that? Do I just do a teaser? So that I struggle with that a little bit. And this one, I've got kind of a couple of ways I'm going to go at it. I think not fully congealed yet because it is still months away, and I'll wait till like the week before and probably change my topic anyway. But the subject is create, and one of the things I have felt my entire life is that I'm not creative. I've always said that I am not a creative person. I don't do anything artistic. I can't draw. I can't paint. I played flute for 7 years. I made second chair in high school, but I played flute like an engineer. I played every note as loud as they said to play it. I played it in tune. I held the note as long as they told me to, but I've been told that that's not music. So I became a mechanical engineer, and again, I could execute the tasks. I did all the stuff I was supposed to do. I knew all the equations, but I wasn't an inventor, if that makes sense. I wasn't what my dad would have called an engineer's engineer, So I was convinced I wasn't creative. But then when I went into IT, I started finding that I could make these things sing. I could get the computer to do my bidding when I was doing computer-aided design and things. And I started looking at the things that did require creativity. And I would suggest that creating a podcast is very creative. It's just not what traditional people will call creative. Traditionally, creative is, you can paint, you can draw, you can play music. Those are creative endeavors. So I'm going to start kind of down that path and then start to talk about what did I get when I started being creative? What did I build? And it's not that I built this amazing podcast network with, 4 podcasts and all this great tools and everything. It's what I built was a community. And that's what the angle I'm going for.
I'm going to be really interested, and I really mean this, to hear your take on this, because it was Chris Breen that convinced me that I should be considered creative. Because I'm like you, I've never played an instrument for any length of time, can't draw for anything, can't paint, that's just not. And Chris educated me, and there's a show way back in the catalog, folks. If I can find it, I will link it, where he convinced me that no, sometimes it's just taking the raw materials and how you put them together is where you become creative. And I'd never really thought about it in exactly that way. And so I still don't consider myself a creative in the as you said, in the purest sense, but I feel qualified to say, yeah, I do create things, maybe not out of whole cloth, but I do create them.
Maybe you've given me a good angle on that to think about. It's possible that the people in a nerd conference audience, a lot of us feel that way. It might be that's a common feeling, right? Because, come on, we're the outcasts, the misfits of the world, right? We have conquered the world, and we're happy about that. But come on. Anybody in that room was first picked for softball? No, right? We weren't the cool kids in high school, So I think that going at that angle of, maybe you felt your whole life you aren't creative. What are the things that you could put together? And I don't think that after listening to what I have to say, the effect of that is you're going to come out and go, wow, I'm going to do a podcast because then I'll have friends. That's not really where I'm going. Where I'm going is that you don't know when you're building something what will come. I had no idea that this whole community thing would happen when I started doing the live show. When I started the podcast, I didn't know anybody would listen. And so it started with little bits and pieces. And every time I spin it up and make something else out of it, some other new effect happens that makes my life more enriched.
I just, again, as a personal aside, I have to ask, because I don't know when Nosillacast started. I knew you I learned to know you from Tim Verporten's Mac Review Cast.
Yeah, I predate the Mac Geek Gab. I predate the Mac Review Cast. I predate the MacBreak Weekly. Actually, maybe not the Mac Review Cast. I predate MacBreak Weekly, though. It was May of 2005. So podcasting started in October of 2004. So I was shortly after that. Adam beat me. So MacCast is the only one I know that's running today that's older than mine.
Yeah.
But I have not missed a show. There was about a 2 or 3 week hiatus right after I did my first 4 shows, and since then I haven't missed a single show.
Yeah, you try to keep the thing flowing, and everybody has different views on that. And again, back in the early days, it was just get the content out there, and you weren't tied to a publication schedule. And now I think, all of us have recognized there are benefits to it. That sometimes it still is a little unrealistic because nobody.
It's really hard to do every week. It's really hard.
Yeah, well, and very few of us do this for a living. There's some that are out there that, that's this is their primary means. But, most of us are doing it as a side thing or as a hobby or, whatever. And so
right.
you do your best. And
To me, the correct answer, because I'm not, I know all, is that if you're going to do it on a schedule, do it on a schedule and make your commitments. If you're not going to do it on a schedule, that's also okay, but don't apologize for the fact that it's not on a schedule. I mean, I know people, even some friends of ours, who will apologize. It's like every time I tune in, it's like, oh, sorry, my dog ate my homework. It's like, just you're doing a show. I'm listening. Let's just go ahead. Why am I learning about why you didn't do some show before now? Because I'm listening to you now. If you like, if I were to miss a show, I think maybe an explanation for why I broke a 14-year streak might be in order. But if you miss 1 out of 5 shows, stop apologizing for it. That's just your show. That's just the way it is. Just embrace it and live with it. And that's just what it is,
And to your point earlier, when you have the communication channels with your community or your audience, however you choose to phrase it, you can let them know that, hey, I'm going to go on vacation next week and there won't be any show, but I'll be back the following, and then be back the following.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's fine. Just don't apologize. Another pet peeve of mine is people who tell you, "Oh, sorry about my voice. I have a cold." Guess what? We all knew that the minute you started talking. It's like, and people go on for like 3 minutes about their cough or something. It's like, yeah, no, heard you. I could tell. I even did a show one week when I had laryngitis. My voice was gone, gone. There was no voice, but I didn't want to miss my streak. So I had it all done in text to voice on the computer. So the entire show was the computer telling the stories.
So I really didn't think you would come up with anything that I'd be interested in hearing from with you.
Ever?
Well,
or ever again, or
maybe not ever, but this sounds really intriguing. Just the evolution, because we've all been there and been part of that evolution, and you've taken it in a particular direction, and so and especially the results of it. Not just the technical part, but the results that happen as you implemented the technical parts. I think are going to be very, very interesting.
Yeah. Now talking to you, I'm thinking it would work really good as an interview. Because the story is kind of jumbled, right? I mean, I've thought about different ways to present this, and I haven't really settled on something. But it could be a linear timeline with stuff coming off of it. And then this happened, and then this happened. Here's a bunch of tech geek stuff, and then this caused this. Or it could be some sort of, messy looking spiral thing that really tells the path, and then these crazy things happen somewhere in here. I don't know. Haven't decided exactly where that goes on. Got to figure out how to do that.
Maybe we resurrect Groucho Marx and do This Is Your Life, Allison Sheridan.
There you
Wasn't
go.
he the host, I think? I think he was the host.
Was he?
I'm not sure.
That Soupy Sales, was it?
No, it wasn't Soupy Sales. No. Anyway, we're really dating ourselves here. So we will be gathering with a lot of our friends, and I hope with a lot of the viewers and listeners here, and with a lot of the Nosillacast audience at McHenry College in Woodstock, Illinois. It's going to be a lot of fun, and we want you to join us. I mean, Allison, so often we talk about how much fun it is. We talk about how much information. It's just all that rolled into one. Yeah,
it's, to me, the magic that Mike Potter and Barry Falk have put together is a good, tight schedule, well-held schedule. They don't let people drone on and on and on. I mean, people end within 5 minutes or so of their anointed time. So it's not one of those things where people run over. So it's tight and crisp. And there's gaps in it just long enough that you can go meet somebody. Somebody asked a question in a session, and you can go, hey, I was thinking about the same thing. And all of a sudden, you have a friend for the rest of your life, because these are people who love the same stuff you do. And then in the evenings, Barry's parties and all of his activities and stuff. Now you let your hair down a little bit more. You're still saying, hey, you mentioned that thing in this talk, and it was I was thinking about the same thing. And then all of a sudden you find out that you're both into photography, or you both raise iris setters or whatever, and you're making these friends, and you want to go back and meet them every year. And it is the essence of community. And tell me if you agree with this, Chuck. There's something about the Mac community that isn't cliquey. Like you can just walk up to somebody that you've heard and, maybe you think, oh, they're famous, whatever, and they just are awesome. Everybody's awesome. I don't think I've met anybody snotty at any of these, people are friendly and they want to share what they know and it's just fun. But you also learn a whole bunch of stuff during the day. It's a perfect balance, I think.
And I would agree with that. And, anybody that's listened to this show knows, how much I think of the Apple user community. And, people will say, well, it's not what it used to be. And I disagree. I think there's something special about it. I don't know what it is, and I don't know how to quantify it or explain it, but I'm with you. I know people that have walked into Macstock and they've said, gee, I was afraid I might not know anybody, or I didn't know anybody and I came anyway. And 10 minutes after you're in, you've got friends, you've got the people you're sitting with, or then you go to lunch with them, and you're right. There's still people, there are people that I keep in touch with that I met at Macstock the first year that I still keep in touch with throughout the year. And look forward to hopefully seeing them again. So absolutely,
yeah. I can put my finger on what it is, and it's in a double negative kind of way. I was talking to some PC friends of mine, and I asked them. I said, "So, people in the Mac community think they're special, like it's all touchy-feely, awesome sauce that all these Mac people all talk to each other. But that certainly exists in the PC community, right?" And they said, What do you mean community? I said, like you get together and you hang out and you go have beers and you play and you go to classes together. You learn you do things, and you talk to. No, not sure what you're talking about. It's not a. I think the PC world is more of an underlying thing that just is. It's not something you choose. Right. And I think maybe the Mac stuff you do choose. iPhone maybe goes somewhere in between because it's so ubiquitous. But I don't know. It smells different to me. But maybe it's what you make of it, Chuck. Maybe it's because you're so friendly.
Well, yeah, there is that. And no, I think you may be onto something. The old saying is that, I have to work on a PC. I get to work on a Mac. But I do find that the PC people, when they go home after sitting in front of a screen for the better part of their day, regardless of what their job is, they want to get away from it, or at least lean back and maybe watch the big screen, the TV. But
I have heard,
Apple people don't seem to be quite that way. If they have something they want to do, well, the first thing they do is reach for their Mac or their iPhone or their iPad.
To be fair, we're definitely generalizing, but I think maybe when people say it's not the same, there are a lot of people who use iPhones who don't know how to do anything on them, and they're just, I do it to do my email and my calendar, and text people, and I do Instagram, and that's all it is. And they don't add apps, they don't play with them, and nothing wrong with that. That's just what they do. But they don't. I mean, I know a really good friend of mine has an iPhone, and we went to Paris together, and she would not bring it with her when we went out. How are you going to take pictures, and how are you going to text, and how are you going to blah, 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 blah? And she's like, huh?
Yeah, maybe.
She had a paper map. She was good.
Well,
so yeah.
I think we may be back to the creativity discussion of, that some of us don't see ourselves as creatives, but we are. It's just we come at it from a different angle.
Yeah. Well, I'll give it a shot. We'll see if that one works, Chuck.
I look forward to it. I really do.
I do want to thank you for having me change my topic last year, though, because I'm going to completely brag here, but I rocked that presentation on mind mapping, and I definitely would not have rocked the previous topic. It would not have come off like that.
Yeah, I agree. You did rock that presentation. It was absolutely terrific. And, it was born out of our discussion here on the show for really I don't think I really intended to ever get you to change it or talk you into it. It just became something that, seemed like a good idea at the time.
Yeah, I guess we probably should real quickly tell the story. I was describing my original topic, and I was practically boring myself to death talking about it. And then somehow mind mapping, I think I mentioned that I've been mind mapping it, and I started talking about what the tool I was using and how I was doing it, and the tool did it all about mind mapping. And Chuck goes, you should talk about that instead. And I went, oh, you're right. That's what I should talk about.
And Mike Potter emailed me after he saw the show and was like, what have you done? I've already published her talk.
Yeah, the flyers had already been printed. The schedule had already been printed. I think it was like a week and a half maybe before the show.
Yeah. Well, I will see. Yeah, I'll see you at Macstock in Woodstock, and we'll have some fun again. And you never know what we might do to each other, practical joke wise, this year.
We'll see. I think I'll be guarding my phone. I can tell you that.
Well, hey, just in case, as if the people here don't know, but give us all your contact information and the shows and everything.
Okay, so the first thing to know is Podfeet. Everything good starts with podfeet.com. That's where my website is, and I have sort of like 4 podcasts. I have my main flagship show is called the Nosillacast, and that's a technology geek podcast with an ever so slight Apple bias. That's mostly me doing reviews and telling tech stories and stuff. It also has Bart Bouchatz on every other week doing a segment called Security Bits, where he tells us whether to light our hair on fire about the latest security news. Then separately, I have Chit Chat Across the Pond Light, which is a tech conversation show where I just talk to people about whatever cool tech thing they're doing. And then Programming by Stealth, where Bart Bouchatz is teaching us to program in an audio podcast, which sounds crazy, but it actually works because he does amazing technology notes. He's got full-on tutorials of everything he's teaching us. And it's sort of a lecture, but I'm the dumb student going, hey, wait a minute, I don't understand, and asking the dumb questions. And it's been going for 75 episodes now, so it's cooking along. We're having a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Podfeet.com.
Podfeet.com. Folks, I want you to join us in Woodstock, Illinois at Macstock. So right now, go to Macstock 2019 and sign up. Probably by the time this is over, the early bird will be done, but there's still some discounts to be had and definitely some great times. Do it.
Now, did you give them your affiliate code, or do you want to give them mine?
Oh, give them yours.
All right. I think it gets you, what is it, like $10 off, something like that, for if you put Podfeet into the thing. And that way you'll have to remember the name of my show, Podfeet.
Right. So one way or another, you can save some money, but by all means, please join us. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices, or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.